My name is Giselle Lopez. I am 28 years old. The morning my whole family turned on me started with my sister calling at 6:30, begging me to put my new building up as collateral for her foreclosure emergency. She swore the bank was days away from taking her house, that my 9-year-old niece Elena would lose her bedroom, and that I was the only person she could count on. By the end of that same week, I had heard her calmly planning to flip my building to pay off nearly $90,000 of trading and gambling losses, sat in a lawyer's office learning how to lock everything down, and walked out of a Sunday dinner after refusing to sign the papers my parents pushed in front of me. This is not just a story about a contract. It is about being the younger sister who was always expected to sacrifice, and the first time I finally said no. If you have ever felt that kind of pressure from family about money, tell me in the comments where you are listening from and how you handled it. 3 days before that call, I had closed on a narrow brick storefront off Park Avenue in Rochester, New York. It had creaky floors, tall front windows, a dusty mezzanine where I dragged a mattress up a metal staircase, and a view of a bus stop and a pizza place. After years of freelancing as a UX designer from noisy apartments and coffee shop tables, I had emptied almost every cent of my savings and taken a modest commercial loan to buy it. It was not glamorous real estate, but it was mine. When my parents came by once, my mom fussed about parking and safety, and my dad spent more time asking my older sister Bianca on FaceTime about her latest promotion than asking me about my plans. I told myself that was familiar and fine. In our family, Bianca had always been the star, and I had always been the one told, "You are good with computers, you will figure it out whenever I needed anything." So when Bianca called before sunrise, I knew it was serious, but I did not expect to hear the word foreclosure. I was half asleep on the mattress surrounded by open paint cans when my phone buzzed nonstop. "Giselle, I need your help." "Like now," she said, her voice ragged. In the background, I heard Elena asking about cereal and a cartoon humming from the TV. Bianca said she and her husband Colton had fallen behind on the mortgage when his hours got cut, that the bank had given them 10 days, and that if they did not show stronger assets, they would lose the house. "I need to use your building as collateral just for a few months," she said. "My friend at the bank says it is simple. You sign, they see, we have support. We refinance. Then we release it. Please, Gigi, you are the only one who can help." When I asked why she had not told me sooner or talked to our parents, she snapped, "You know how Dad is. He lectures, he does not help. We will explain everything at dinner. Just come and do not freak out." She hung up before I could agree or refuse. A minute later, my mom texted a long paragraph about how stressful things were for Bianca, how hard Colton worked, and how a generous little sister could save the day. That phrase landed like a rock. In our house, generous had always meant I gave up my room when relatives visited, while Bianca kept hers, that I babysat Elena for free, so Bianca could go to networking events, that I took community college classes I could afford, while my parents wrote checks for Bianca's private school. They had paid nearly $80,000 for her degree and another $20,000 for her wedding, then co-signed a loan when she and Colton wanted a bigger house in the suburbs. When I asked for help with tuition or rent, my mom would say, "We do not have infinite money, Mija. You are good with computers, you will figure it out." I did figure it out, piecing together gigs and roommates while they bragged about Bianca's career and described my work as some computer thing. Now that same pattern was being dressed up as my chance to be the hero. The more I replayed Bianca's call, the less it made sense. She was a marketing director. Colton worked in financial sales. Their neighborhood was comfortable, not extravagant. You do not just wake up 10 days from foreclosure without months of warning letters. That afternoon, while I dragged a rug in from my car, my downstairs neighbor Franklin Boyd stuck his head through the open door. Franklin was retired and had lived in the building since the 80s. I joked that my sister already wanted to use the place as collateral. His expression changed immediately. "Be careful with that kiddo," he said, stepping inside. I spent years as a city housing inspector. I saw plenty of people lose buildings to temporary paperwork they signed for family. Once your name is on something, people get strange. Talk to a lawyer before you sign anything. I laughed it off in the moment, but his warning sat next to generous little sister in my chest and would not move even when I tried to bury myself in paint colors and mood boards. The next morning, my friend Casey Myers texted asking if I wanted a break from paint fumes and to meet her at Bean Line, the coffee shop where she worked. Bean Line was crowded laptops and strollers everywhere. Casey slid me a dark roast and pointed to a booth half hidden behind a wooden partition. "I will go on break in a minute," she mouthed. I settled in and opened my laptop, trying to focus on client emails instead of mortgages. On the other side of the partition, two women were talking just loudly enough that every word carried. I was not trying to listen until I heard my own name. "Once Giselle signs, it is done," Bianca's voice said, clear and casual. "We put the building into our LLC, flip it to that investor from downstate, pay off Colton's mess, and maybe finally take Elena somewhere warm for spring break." My whole body went cold. That was not how anyone talked about a temporary lien. The woman with her sounded uneasy. "I thought you said the bank was taking your house," she said. Bianca laughed, low and bitter. "Please, the house is fine. The real problem is Colton's day trading and those sports betting apps. He is down almost $90,000. We are drowning. My parents do not have it, and Giselle just dropped everything she owns into that cute little storefront. She has no idea what it is worth once you open up the second floor. She will be fine. I will cry. Mention Elena talk about the bank wanting collateral. She will sign. Older siblings are supposed to get more anyway. It is payback." I sat there frozen, listening to my own sister calmly plan to use my building to erase their mistakes. I finally shoved my laptop into my bag and slipped outside. Casey followed a minute later on break. When I told her what I had heard, she swore and said, "I thought that was your sister." When she said your name, I started recording. She sent me the audio file, and I walked back to the building with Bianca's voice replaying in my ears. Franklin's business card for a real estate attorney sat where I had dropped it the day before. I picked it up and called. An hour later, I was downtown in a small office across from Natalie Morgan, a woman in her 50s with silver hair and zoning maps on her walls. I laid out the story and played the recording. She listened without interrupting. When it ended, she said, "This is not a misunderstanding. This is attempted fraud. They want you to sign papers under false pretenses so they can use or sell your property. New York law does not leave you helpless." She pulled out a legal pad. "Here is what I recommend. We transfer the building into a limited liability company that is held in an irrevocable trust with me as trustee and you as beneficiary. We record a declaration that nothing can be sold or mortgaged without your written consent. Then we draft a 99-year lease from that company to you personally. Even if someone somehow grabbed the title, they could not sell it free of you." The legal language was dense, but the idea was simple rap. The building in layers nobody else could peel back. Natalie moved quickly. She drafted the company and trust documents, while I answered questions called a notary, and then walked me to the Monroe County clerk to have everything recorded. We chose an effective date a few days before Bianca's call, which was perfectly legal because nothing contradicted reality. Standing on the sidewalk afterward with stamped copies in a folder, I felt both heavier and steadier. "Now, if they bring anything to that dinner, you can listen and leave," Natalie said. "If they push, hand them my card. If they escalate, we talk about complaints and maybe restraining orders. You are not stuck." Before I left, she gave me a draft cease and desist letter addressed to my parents, Bianca and Colton, in case their pressure turned into harassment. I slid the folder into my tote bag like armor and went back to the building, still shaky but clearer than I had been that morning. Even with those papers, the guilt was loud. To deal with it, I finally booked a therapy appointment I had been putting off. 2 days later, I sat on a worn leather couch in Dr. Daniel Harper's office near the hospital, picking at a loose thread on my sleeve. I told him about being the younger daughter who moved home to take care of my mom after surgery, while Bianca could not take time off, about how my parents used to joke that Bianca was the princess and I was the survivor, about watching them write big checks for her while I quietly set up payment plans for my student loans. Then I told him about the call, the coffee shop, Natalie's folder, and the dinner that was coming. He listened and finally asked, "If you say yes at that dinner, what happens to you?" I pictured losing the building, moving back into my childhood bedroom, and starting over from zero while Bianca's family got a reset. "And if you say no?" he asked. "They will call me selfish," I said. "And you will still have something that is yours," he answered. Hearing that out loud shifted something inside me. Sunday came fast. I parked across from my parents' split level in Iron Dequoit and sat in the car until my hands stopped shaking. Natalie's folder was in my tote. My phone was fully charged with the recording queued up. Inside, my mom greeted me with a kiss and shiny eyes. Bianca sat on the couch in a camel-colored sweater, Colton next to her in a too-tight blazer, both of them putting on their best responsible adult faces. Elena colored at the kitchen table, earbuds in oblivious. My dad came in from the garage, clapped my shoulder, and immediately asked Bianca how work was going. We did small talk about church and his bowling league, like we were strangers. When my mom finally announced dinner, everyone moved to the table. Bianca carried a manila folder like it was another side dish and laid it between the mashed potatoes and the bread basket. I could feel the whole evening tightening around that folder. Once plates were filled, Bianca cleared her throat. "Before Elena's bedtime, we should go over the boring adult stuff," she said. Colton opened the folder and pulled out a stack of documents. "This is just a temporary lien," he said, sliding the top page and a blue pen toward me. "The bank wants to see that Bianca and I have support. You are not really giving up ownership, you are just letting them know you have our backs. Once we refinance it, disappears." My dad nodded like a cheerleader. "We never had anyone do this for us," he said. "You kids helping each other, that is how it should be." My mom added, "If your sister loses that house, where is Elena supposed to go? You cannot put a price on a child feeling safe." I looked at Elena and felt my chest squeeze, but then I remembered Bianca at Beanline describing my studio as something she could trade away. I studied the top page more carefully. Even without being a lawyer, I could see it was not the simple lien they were selling. It talked about assigning beneficial interest in my company and granting an irrevocable security interest that gave them broad control. "Who drafted this?" I asked. Colton shrugged. "A friend at work. Standard stuff. No need to stress over the legalese." Bianca leaned in, eyes glistening, voice trembling in ways I recognized from every time she wanted something. "We are already on thin ice, Gigi. The bank gave us 10 days. We are down to 3. If you say no, I honestly do not know what we will do. I cannot watch a foreclosure notice go up in front of Elena's home." My mom's fork clinked on her plate. "Giselle, do not be dramatic. Nobody is taking anything from you. You still have your little office. Just sign so we can all breathe." That little office phrase scratched like sandpaper. I took a slow breath, reached into my tote, and pulled out Natalie's folder. "Before I sign anything," I said, "you should see what I have already signed." I slid the stamped deed transfer toward Colton. "As of last week, the building is owned by 4th Street Design LLC, which is held in an irrevocable trust. I am the beneficiary and attorney. Natalie Morgan is the trustee. Nothing can be sold or mortgaged without both our signatures." Bianca's face tightened. "I laid down the 99-year lease. I also signed this lease, giving me the right to live and work there for the rest of my life. Any buyer would have to honor it. So even if I were foolish enough to sign your friend's paperwork, it would not give you what you think." My dad frowned at the jargon. "Why would you go through all that trouble?" he demanded. "We are your family." I met his eyes. Because last week my family sat in a coffee shop on East Avenue talking about how to trick me into signing away that same building, flip it to an investor, and use the money to pay off nearly $90,000 in trading and gambling losses, I said. Bianca stiffened. What are you talking about? She snapped. I took out my phone, opened Casey's recording, and hit play. Bianca's voice filled the room, describing my cute little storefront, the investor from downstate, the plan to guilt me with Elena, and the idea that older siblings deserve more. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad's face went dark. Elena looked around, confused. Mom, she whispered. Bianca lunged halfway across the table. Turn that off, she shouted. Colton muttered something about illegal recordings. I let it play to the end. Natalie had already explained New York's one-party consent law. I was safe. When the file stopped, the silence felt like a weight on the table. Is that you? My dad asked Bianca. Tears sprang into her eyes instantly. I was venting, she said. It is out of context. Colton is under so much stress. I did not mean all of it. You are really going to blow up this family over one stupid conversation, she asked me, like I had started the fire. I laughed once without humor. This is not about one conversation, I said. It is about a lifetime. I looked at my parents. You paid nearly $80,000 for Bianca's college. You gave her $20,000 for her wedding. You co-signed her business loan. When I wanted extra classes or help moving out, you told me to hustle. So I did. I finally bought something that is mine, and your first instinct was to put it on the table for Bianca because she deserves more. Then, she got caught planning to steal it, and you are more upset that I protected myself than that she planned it. My mom's eyes snapped to me. We let you live here rent-free, she said. We did plenty. You let me live here so I could cook, drive you to appointments, and watch Elena, I answered. That is different. My dad slammed his hand on the table. You will not talk to your mother like that. We are asking you to save your niece's home. Sign the papers. We will deal with Bianca later. For a moment, the old reflex to fix everything tugged hard. Elena's wide eyes. My dad's command. My mom's shaking shoulders, all of it pressed on the part of me that had always chosen them over myself. Then I pictured packing my things back into boxes, handing over my keys, and watching strangers gut the walls I had just painted, while Bianca posted beach photos captioned "New Beginnings." My hands stopped shaking. No, I said. I am not signing. Not tonight. Not ever. If you keep pushing, my attorney will treat it as attempted fraud, and we can all explain ourselves to people who do not care how much you cry. Bianca stared like she did not recognize me. You are unbelievable, she said. After everything Mom and Dad did for you, everything they did for you, I cut in. All I ever got was the job of cleaning up. I pushed the manila folder back toward Colton. If you ever bring paperwork to me again, it goes straight to my lawyer. If you use my name on a loan application, I will sue you. I stood up. I am finally being reasonable, I said, and walked out. Back at the building, I closed the door and let myself slide down against it until my breathing evened out. The space was still half finished, but it felt safer than my parents' house ever had. 15 minutes later, someone knocked, and I jumped until I heard Franklin's voice. You okay in there? He called. I opened the door and he held up a grocery bag. Brought leftovers. My daughter cooked like she was feeding an army. Over microwaved pasta at my wobbly table, I told him what had happened. He listened, shook his head, and said, Families and property. I have seen that movie too many times. Most people do not lawyer up in time. You did good. My phone lit up with my mom's sobbing voicemails, my dad's angry texts, and Bianca's messages about betrayal. I did not answer. Instead, I wrote a calm summary to Natalie. Within an hour, she sent back a finalized cease and desist letter with their names on it. The next day, after my dad called 6 times in an hour, I blocked his number and let her office send the letter. It hurt, and it felt like finally breathing. Fallout came fast. Within a week, my cousin Alexandra texted asking if it was true I had refused to help Elena keep her home. She and her husband Victor invited me to coffee. When we sat down, Alexandra slid her phone across the table. Bianca had been posting in the family group chat about greedy little sisters and ungrateful kids who forget who fed them. I let Alexandra and Victor listen to Casey's recording. Watching their faces shift from confused to furious was oddly comforting. She really said all that Alexandra asked. About flipping your building and older siblings deserving more? I nodded. And Mom and Dad still told me to sign. Alexandra shook her head. They are telling everyone you hired some shark lawyer for no reason. Nobody mentioned that your sister tried to steal from you. A few days later, she texted again to say the audio had made it into the extended family chat. Some relatives sided with Bianca out of habit, but plenty did not. Two aunts even called my mom out for the favoritism. I left my phone on Do Not Disturb and let those conversations happen without me. Outside our family, consequences hit harder and faster. The friend Bianca had been bragging to at Beanline also worked at her agency, and gossip travels quickly. Word reached her boss, Joan Phillips, that Bianca had been trying to pull company clients into a personal real estate deal and using work time and contacts to court an investor. In marketing, reputation is everything. Joan called her into HR. A month later, Bianca's photo disappeared from the agency website and her profile quietly changed to open to work. Around the same time, Natalie, with my permission, sent a letter to the compliance department at Colton's firm. It laid out the attempted scheme and attached a transcript of the recording. His bosses did not care about sibling drama. They cared that one of their salespeople had tried to engineer a shady transaction using a relative's property to cover personal losses. Within weeks, he was suspended, then fired, and his licenses were flagged. Without their salaries, the facade collapsed. They were already sitting on maxed-out cards and that mountain of losses. Missed payments turned into lawsuits that spilled onto my parents because they had co-signed earlier consolidation loans. Bianca and Colton sold their suburban house before the bank could force them. The sale barely covered the mortgage and fees. They moved with Elena into a small apartment across town. My parents quietly refinanced their own place, pushing my dad's retirement back, and even tried living with Bianca for a while to help, until constant arguments sent them home again. Through Alexandra, I heard that my mom told people she did not understand how I could abandon my family in their hardest time, but she still never called me herself. Meanwhile, my life finally had room to grow. I built out the studio, signed new clients, hosted small workshops for local shop owners, and hired an accountant. Once a week, I saw Dr. Harper and worked through the guilt that flared whenever I saw a kid Elena's age. I ignored Bianca's new email apology that ended with a request for a small short-term loan, forwarded it to Natalie, and kept my boundary. That fall, I hosted a Friendsgiving at the studio. For the first time, I sat at the head of a table full of people who had chosen me. By the time a year had passed since that dinner, I realized I had not checked my blocked messages folder in months. Whatever my parents and Bianca were saying about me belonged to them. My life was here. New clients, an intern from RIT, eager to learn the low hum of my printer. I have not spoken to my parents, my sister, or Colton since that night. There has been no dramatic showdown, no surprise apology, no holiday truce for Elena's sake. I changed my phone number, kept them blocked, and told Natalie that if they ever contact her office, she can respond with the shortest legal answer and nothing more. I do not sit around hating them. Hate would mean they still lived rent-free in my head. I understand how years of favoritism twisted Bianca's sense of what she was owed, but understanding is not the same as forgiving. When I lock up the studio and see the lights of Rochester reflecting on wet pavement, I feel calm pride. This building is mine because I fought to protect it. If you hear your own family in my story, remember this: you are allowed to say no, even if they call you selfish. Protect your own foundation first.